Good morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of politicians, personalities, and perspectives. This morning we're going to bring you a nice personality and some perspectives on where to live in this county, depending upon your circumstances. Steve, we always try to start Viewpoint with a kudo or two. School is starting, and we have had here a guest called Moms Who Care. That's Cindy Ossiker and Mara Williams, two retired school teachers who decided that they weren't going to retire from education, even though they retired from formally teaching in the classroom. And so they have been very instrumental in gathering things for kids who are going to school, clothing, school supplies, and so forth. Moms Who Care. I wish I had a phone number. It just occurred to me as we came on air. That's who we would salute this morning as a tribute to those folks who are doing good things in the community. Mara Williams and Cindy Ossiker. And the school system would be glad to give you their numbers, I'm sure. But I want to be serious about this. They're doing a lot of good with practically nothing. They get contributions from people around, and so I'll tip my hat to those two young ladies, Judith Kay.
Yes.
Moms Who Care. Something that deserves recognition. Now, Mrs. Busby, we've got a lot to talk about this morning, so let's just bring our guest right on this morning, and let's get right into housing.
All right.
Public housing, that would be.
That would be true. Steve Allen is the executive director of the Logan County Housing Authority, and he's going to tell us what it's all about. When we moved here, those many years ago, there was just Centennial Courts, but it's expanded since then, and they have some nice apartment type places for people to live, and we're going to talk about the availabilities and the prices and the qualifications, etc., etc. And if you have any questions, call 648-5510. Right?
She came through, Jim.
How about that? She remembered.
She remembered a number.
Well, wonders never cease.
A big round of applause here in the studio.
Yes. So, the Housing Authority isn't just a Logan County outfit. It's a national outfit, isn't it?
Housing authorities are nationwide. There's approximately 3,300 housing authorities throughout the United States, similar to the Logan County. In the state of Illinois, there's 109 housing authorities that provide housing for low-income families.
Are most of them up in the northern part of the state?
No, they're spread almost in every county.
Is that right?
There's 111 counties in the state of Illinois, and I believe there's 109 housing authorities in almost all the counties.
Okay.
Some of them are as small as 50 units. Other ones are as big as 30,000 units of public housing. The Logan County Housing Authority has 193 public housing units and 62 Section 8 vouchers.
And it goes back a number of years, doesn't it, Steve? When were the housing authorities, plural, instituted?
They were normally mostly instituted in the late 1940s.
Okay.
I think Lincoln's introduction to public housing was probably Centennial Courts. Am I correct in that, Steve?
Yes, in 1952, Centennial Courts was built.
Out there on the east side of town.
Yes.
And then
1972, the Logan Court high-rise and duplexes were built.
And that is on North State Street?
That's on North College Street.
College Street.
Yes, sir.
Well,
now,
I forgot his streets already.
There are 193 public housing units here. Is that about the same ratio as everybody has compared to our population?
No, they vary, but compared to the population, probably yes. If that made any sense.
You might run that by me or rephrase it. I think I missed
I'm just
something.
I'm trying to keep up with Bill. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not easy. You know, he's such a young buck, and you know they just have flight of ideas.
A lot of the smaller cities have a lot fewer housing units
Sure.
than the bigger cities. For example, let me give you an example of the Section 8 program. We have 62 vouchers, and we spend roughly $15,000 a month subsidizing rents to the landlords here in Logan County. In comparison, Chicago, they have 16,000 vouchers, and they spend $5 million per month to the landlords.
Woofda.
And listen to this: the largest housing authority in the United States, New York City, has 98,000 vouchers, and they spend $30 million per year to subsidize, not per year, per month, to subsidize those vouchers.
Isn't that, well, you should say thank you God that you didn't get executive director of that outfit.
That would have been something.
Wouldn't it?
I don't think he could have lasted with Blasio.
I came from Harris County, which is Houston's in the middle of it, and that was the second largest countywide housing authority in the United States.
Is that a fact? Here's
And it's a big difference. Harris County, at that time when I left there 30 years ago, served over 6 million people.
Wow.
And I left that, and I came to Logan County, which served roughly 30,000 people.
You briefly mentioned Section 8 there. Now, I think that that's a term that we've all heard.
I picked up on
But
that in a
don't-
hurry. That's a military expression. If you went Section 8, you were around the corner.
Yeah, right. But your Section 8, let's talk a little bit, define that and tell us how that works, would you please?
The Section 8 voucher program was created in 1983. And the purpose of the creation of it is to deconcentrate poverty. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cabrini Green in Chicago, Illinois. It was a big housing project that housed a whole bunch of people in one
I've not
block,
seen
two block
it,
of
but
an
we
area.
sure hear about it. Yeah.
Our projects here at Logan County, 100 units, where there's 100 units of people that's living in poverty in one area, 93 people in poverty in another area. Section 8 was created to deconcentrate that and give people a voucher to go out into the community to find a place to live amongst everybody in Logan County, and then the housing authority will subsidize their rent. It's a huge program. It's a great program. We're struggling right now with that program because we're having a hard time finding landlords because of the negative stereotype that the community has with public housing and the
Sure.
Section 8 program.
Sure, that's a natural thing.
Yes.
And in a metropolitan area like in Cook County, you don't have that kind of problems because there's a lot of people out there who want to take your money.
Yeah. Well, the fact of the matter is, a person that's on a Section 8 program that's been waiting on the waiting list for a year and a half to 2 years, and sometimes longer, when they do get that voucher and they go out and rent that house, they are so thankful that they are out there living in the community, in their home, with their yard, with their children, raising their children amongst everybody else in that neighborhood. They would never tear that unit up, that house up. They would never do it. They take care of it. They treat it like gold. It's a tenant that the landlord would have for many, many years.
It's a dream that they never dared hope would come true,
That's
did they?
correct.
Now, do we have some of that here in Logan County?
We do. We have 62 vouchers.
62.
We're trying to lease up. We're struggling. We have landlords, and we have some really good landlords, but there's a shortage of housing in Logan County. It's a short of affordable housing. The housing authority subsidizes these people's rents, so they don't have to pay the full burden of it. A lot of times we'll pay 90, 80, 90% of their rent, so the landlord always gets their money. Right now we're trying to lease up 4 or 5 Section 8 voucher holders, but they're struggling to find a house. So if there's any landlords out there that want to get involved in the program, they can contact my office and talk to Brenda Kodak. She's my Section 8 coordinator.
Steve, do you feel like a circus juggler at times? You've got many balls in the air, you know. Yours is a multifaceted responsibility. We go out here to the east side of town, Centennial Court, which was the original housing authority, and the high rise, which is on North College there. And that's been established, what did you said earlier in the show, what year we built that?
1952.
52.
And,
Boy, it's been there a long time.
It went over a major renovation approximately 30 years ago, where we gutted the whole thing and spent the next 8 to 10 years putting it back together.
Really?
Yes, it's if nobody's been out there lately, go out there and take a look at it. It's a really nice project. It's clean. We've got a really great maintenance staff that takes care of it, and the crime rate out there is very, very low.
Let's kind of dispel some of the things that people think. I think public housing, it gets kind of a rough deal because we don't understand it. We don't really know. When we say public housing, we don't know what we're talking about.
Well, they do have a bad. People do have a bad rap about public housing people. The fact of the matter is, 98% of the people I deal with on a daily basis are really good people. They're hardworking people. They're kind. They're nice. They're just decent people.
They appreciate being able to live in nice quarters.
Absolutely. There's 2%. I call them my 2%ers. You've heard of the 1%er. That's the upper class. Well, I've got the 2%er. And my 2%er are just 2% of the people I deal with, causes me 98% of my work.
Yeah.
They're the people that's getting busted for drugs, battery, domestic battery. They're in trouble. At any given time, I might have 4 to 7 people that I'm dealing with like that. Those are the people that you're seeing in the paper, and they're giving the other 98%
A bad rap.
a bad name. You think about it, when we're dealing with hundreds of people here in public housing here in Logan County, and 300 or 400 of them at any given time, you never ever have any problems with it all. They're good, they're hardworking people, they work. They're elderly people, they're disabled people. They have the bad rap. It's unfair because you got 2% of the people, and if you go back and I don't want to go into the detail of the crime statistics here in Logan County, but I don't know what it is in the last few years, but 5 or 6 years ago, it was higher in Logan County and Lincoln around my housing project. The crime rate in the housing project was lower.
Maybe people preying on older people in different, more modest circumstances.
Yeah, we have
Perhaps.
that. Yes.
Yeah, but
There's always an element out there that will do that.
You're always going to have that. They'll always be with us, that element that justifies the existence of police forces, etc.
Yeah. Let me run down the list here of who we provide housing assistance to.
Go for it.
We provide housing to unemployed single mothers that are in an abusive situation. We deal with a lot of that. We have a lot of young ladies coming in with children, small children or pregnant, that's in an abusive situation. And they need a house. They can't find and afford a house, conventional housing. We can help them, and we do help them. We have a large
difficult
population.
to think about that, but this is the real world we're talking about now.
Yes, and we're dealing with people with very low income. Our average income is just over $13,000 per year.
Oh boy, yeah.
That's average over all of our people that we deal with. We provide housing for disabled people that are trying to gain their independence. People that quadriplegic sometimes. We've had people like that in there that do very well. We have people that's got all kinds of disabilities, and they do very well in the environment we have. People are very supportive of it. We have a great community of people that support them, and they thrive. They have that bad negative stereotype because they live in public housing, but they could never afford conventional housing. So this federal money that funds these subsidies is going for a good thing. If it wasn't for this public housing, some of these disabled people would be in a nursing home. And we have elderly people that's failing in their health. Here's a story. I've been blabbing too much to stop me.
No.
Here's a good example of a person that we serve. an elderly person that's raised a family on a farm, been married for 50 years, had 6 kids, thrived in the community, they raised the children moved out of state. They're all over the United States. The husband dies. They didn't plan properly, and they lost the farm. The kids are gone. They can't help her out. The husband's dead. She had nowhere to go. She applied for public housing. She moved into my high-rise, and she made some of the best apple pies you'll ever have in your whole life.
Bless her heart.
The most kindest person you ever had.
Yeah.
They don't need to stereotype that lady as a public housing resident, because she did her, she raised her family. She lived out on a farm. She could, she did what she's supposed to did, but the luck fell on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you have lots of stories amongst these people that would be like that, things have just befallen them that put them out there. If you're disabled, it's pretty hard to work. If you're a young mother who leaves because she's being abused and takes her kids with her, you start weighing daycare against a minimum wage job, and it's kind of a no fight thing.
Yeah.
That you're kind of up the creek.
Steve, you have elderly people there, of course, and at my age, you begin to think about this terrible business of Alzheimer's. Inevitably, you're going to have that happen in your housing authority, and somebody has to take authority to make some decisions if family is not around. Does that fall under your jurisdiction?
It does.
That's a tough call.
It's one of the hardest things I've ever dealt with. You're dealing with elderly people that some of them does not have family. Others that do, that won't be supportive but won't get involved. And these people need to be taken care of. They might be starting stove fires. They might be leaving the apartments and not knowing where they're at. Showing all kinds of signs of dementia. And I have to act. I have to give them the help they need. And sometimes that's very difficult because they don't think they need help. And sometimes I have to force it. But I've seen a lot of that over the years.
So now, not only are you the executive director, but in some cases you're the father too.
Yes.
Or grandfathers.
I have a really good staff of 8 people. Tom Rowland is my housing manager. He helps out in that area. He's a retired police officer. He's worked for the police department for almost 30 years, a detective the last few years. I've got a lady, Brenda Kodak, which is my administrative assistant. She helps me in that area. Really good with dealing with people. I feel really blessed because I've got a great group of people. My receptionist that takes care of she's sort of guiding the ship every day. She answers the phone. She's dealing with all the people coming in every day. She's really good with people. So knock on wood, I'm lucky to have her there. So I deal with these people, but I have a staff that makes my job really super easy.
Yeah, without a good staff in a situation like that, you'd be swimming without oars.
I look at it this way, Bill. A coach is only as good as a team.
Well, you're exactly correct about
I've got a really good team. I've got a 5-member board. Dan Meyer, he's my chairman of the board. I don't know if you know him. I'm sure he knows you guys.
Yeah, I know Danny.
I'll ask him about you, Bill. I'll ask him if he's got any stories he wants to share with me.
Don't get in depth. We have a team too here, Steve. We have a team known as sponsors, and we're going to take a few seconds time now to acknowledge them with appreciation. So go right ahead, Mr. Ash. Good morning, and welcome back to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politics, and perspectives. Our guest this morning, Mr. Steve Allen. Steve is a fellow who has a huge job with very few dedicated staff members. Steve's in charge of Logan County Public Housing here, and I say county. Are there any outside of Lincoln housing units at all, Steve, that I'm not aware of any?
No, there's none in Logan County, just in Lincoln.
It's right here in Lincoln, yes.
The housing that would be in the county would be that Section 8
Right.
voucher I was
Yes,
talking
yes,
about
uh-huh.
earlier.
Yes.
Judy she
let's-
wanted to ask you about the HUD.
Yeah, well, there are all these terms that we've heard over and over, know nothing about them. Section 8 being one, HUD being another. Let's talk a little, because those kind of units you would have out in the county even.
That's called
Let's
Housing and
talk a
Urban
little
Development.
bit.
Am I correct in that?
Yeah, what's that, Bill?
HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Am I
Housing and
correct in
Urban
that?
Development.
Right.
They were created in 1937 with a budget of $51 million. Let's think about that.
Remember, that was
1937.
Franklin Roosevelt's time, folks.
Yes, $51 million. Back then, that was a lot of money.
Oh, my, yes.
The budget today is $44 billion. So we're looking at $51 million back then, and now we're at $44 billion today.
With a B.
B. That's a huge number. HUD has a staff of 10,000 people. Now, that's not Housing Authority staff. That's a HUD staff that works in the regional offices in Washington, D.C.
About 10% of which really produce. The rest of them are just there.
If that. Yeah, if that. They generally do a pretty good job for me, Bill.
Good. It's good to know. None of us, going into an election year now, and everybody's scared to death about taxes and all that. And by the way, we've passed up a couple of opportunities to help our county with the tax referendum. The most important of which now is the one that we lost on the courthouse, and now we're paying the fiddler for that because we have serious problems with our jail and our courthouse. And perhaps that'll come around again, and I'd like for you to stop and think about that. That was only 50 cents on $100 that you would be paying. So in any event, that's my speech for that. As Judy says, where am I? Nobody minds paying taxes if we're getting something back for it. And we have to be mindful that in every society, there are some who do a little better than others and some that just don't do well at all. And we can't just turn our backs on those who don't do well. Sometimes there are circumstances over which they have no control at all. And we have to be mindful of that. So we need to be supportive of Logan County Housing in that you're doing a whale of a job. You're an answer to a lot of people's prayers.
Thank you, Bill. Followed up on that, one of the clients that we deal with is homeless people. We'd have numerous people coming in all the time claiming they're homeless.
Yeah.
And we provide them housing. Now, if we weren't there, they could be out on the street somewhere. Logan County don't have a huge problem with that homeless problem right now, and that's because the Housing Authority is helping a lot of them out. So we deal with this all the time. We deal with young children. We deal with 18 to 21-year-old kids from broken families that have absolutely nowhere to go. Nowhere.
See, those are the things that get to people like me. I'm a softie in that where kids are involved. And some of them aren't truly innocent in that sense of the word. They're victims of somebody else's creations. And those are things that we have to be mindful of at all times.
Yeah, I have two daughters, a 31-year-old and a 36-year-old. And when I see a young lady coming in carrying a young baby, or perhaps pregnant, that she's in there, how do I get in housing? And she's crying. She's from a broken family, or she's been abused by her boyfriend, her husband. She don't know where to go. And it just hits me in the heart so hard because I've got two daughters, and I don't want to see those daughters ever going down that road and being in a situation like that. We have children younger than 18 come in wanting housing. And we can't give it to them unless they're emancipated. We can't do it. But sometimes that happens, and we do give them housing.
It seems to me that we more frequently hear people in positions of authority make a connection between what might look like irresponsibility or bad luck and mental health issues. Do you find quite a correlation from your job too?
Absolutely. We're trained in that area. Things aren't always as they appear.
Amen and amen.
Yeah, people look at a situation and they make judgments, and things are very seldom the way they appear. And when you get into the detail of what's happening, you look at it a whole different way. There's a whole different light that comes on that we provide a huge service in this community. We help a huge amount of people. And I feel so fortunate to be able to serve in this position and have a part of it. People are very thankful. They're very kind. They really are thankful what they have. The 98%ers, the 2%er, there's no hope.
Well, we're always going to have that.
That's correct.
You know, you're not going to, there's no way you're going to overcome that.
That's
Well,
right.
you know, we can sit here and be philosophical all we want, but all that does is use up airtime, and we haven't solved anything. The fact of the matter is that we have some things that we need to talk about that Steve has been very careful about trying to delineate for us with questions that we might want to ask him about HUD. That's a very important part of our community. It kind of isolated out there, even though it's a big several-story building. What is it, about 4 stories out there?
It's 5 stories.
5 stories, and so 5 stories of people who are we're fulfilling a need.
Yes.
And now, how do I qualify, or how does Judith qualify if we get dispossessed? What will it cost Judith and or I to come to you and say we need a room? And in Judith's case, she's going to pay a lot more than I do because her income is more than mine.
The public housing program and the Section 8 program has 2 qualification factors, or 2 opposite. So what I'm going to say, and it's very complicated.
No doubt.
It's to calculate rent, it takes a spreadsheet and probably somebody with a master's degree. I don't know how my housing staff does it because I don't know how to do it.
Well, that's why you have them.
That's why I don't work
right.
with that every day, but it's very, very complicated. But in generally, a family of 1 for public housing, you need to make less than $38,550. A family of 2, $44,050. A family of 3, less than $49,550. And a family of 4, you need to make less than $55,050
To qualify
for public housing. The Section 8 program, it's lower than that. Be mindful, in the United States, there's 49 million people, or 16% of the population, that's living in poverty. In Illinois, there's 1.8 million people, or 14% of the population, that's living in poverty. Logan County, there's 3,178 people, or 12% of the population in Logan County that lives in poverty.
12%.
That's amazing
12%.
to me.
That's
Yes.
pretty high to me.
Yes.
12%.
You need to have one person working a full-time job. They need to have 2.2 full-time jobs to afford a 2-bedroom apartment here in Logan County at the current rates in Logan County. 39.2% of Logan County children qualify for free or reduced price school lunch.
Almost 40% of children?
Almost 40% of children in Logan County qualify for reduced price school lunch.
Amazing.
There's over 4,000 people receiving food stamps. They don't call them food stamps anymore.
That's staggering.
In Logan County.
Well, as I said, if you want to know about what's going on in Logan County economically, you drive by the food pantry on the days that they distribute food, and your eyes will arch a little bit because there are a number of people who take advantage of that service.
Here's an
and you got to
interesting.
go to the food pantry because there are a lot of volunteers who do a lot of good there.
They absolutely do. Here's an interesting one. 70% of senior Illinois women living alone are living in poverty, near poverty.
70?
70% of single women living alone are living near poverty in Illinois.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always think, though, that I look at it as Chicago as opposed to downstate, thinking that there's just got to be a monumental difference between percentages north and percentages of the rest of us. Am I operating in total delusion?
No, it would be that. Yeah, no, there's the.
Well, you got to remember, number one, there are damn few Steve Allens up in Cook County. You know, he's driven. The fact that he needs a job, of course, but philosophically, he's
Yes.
driven to do a good job for those who need that service in this community.
He's an Elam-Ozanary.
Wait, say that again.
Me no comprende.
No comprende.
The larger counties, people are not so well driven. That's not always the case, but some few up there. But there's a lot of dudes up there that got both hands out and say, "Give me."
When I worked in Harris County, I talked about that earlier. It's the second largest county housing authority in the United States. You've got a lot more people concentrated in an area. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you've got a lot more problems.
Sure.
It's a whole lot easier here in Logan County, although we'd have our share of problems there too. But I would venture to say my 2% rule I have here in Logan County would probably be about the same up there in Harris County and Houston. Mm-hmm. I'd say 2 or 3% of the people would be a problem. The rest of the people are just good people that's disabled, elderly,
Hit a bump in the road.
handicapped, hit a bump in the road, didn't plan properly for a retirement, had death in the family. There's a lot of reasons people are in this public housing project here in Logan County, and none of them make them bad people.
You know, you're really an advocate for the people because so many times we make a decision as to how we feel about something based on absolutely nothing but something we pulled out of the air. It's just, I have no idea what we're talking about.
And that's correct.
I've lived that way for a long time.
I'm not going to get there, Jim Ash. In the interest of airtime, we'll just move right along because that's another 45 minutes right there.
Oh dear. Now on Section 8, that you could have a Section 8 house that some people were living in anywhere in the county. Is that right?
Yes, the Section 8 housing here in Logan County is not owned by the housing authority.
No.
That is privately owned property
Right.
that landlords have in Logan County that qualify for our program. The qualifications is they meet in an inspection requirement, and it's got to be in pretty decent shape. We're not real stringent. It just can't be a rundown slumlord house.
No.
It can't have leaks in the roof. It can't have huge holes in the walls, roach infested. It's going to be a safe, decent, sanitary,
Livable place.
modest, livable
Well, the other
place.
side, the flip side of that is that you qualify for on behalf of the landlords. You qualify the potential renters, so he's not going to get somebody who's going to tear the place up.
Bill, we do not qualify. We approve their qualifications to make sure they qualify for the program.
Okay.
But the landlord will do their own background check on that tenant.
I see. Okay.
We will.
So that onus is not on your back.
We will give, say for example, you qualify for the program, Bill, we would give you a voucher because you qualify, and then you would go out and do your homework. You would go out and find your own home to live.
I see.
And you would reach an agreement with that landlord. There would be at least between you and that landlord, period. Mm-hmm. We would not be involved in that. Mm-hmm. You, on the other hand, would have agreement with the housing authority that you would abide by these standards. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the landlord will have an agreement with the housing authority that they will abide by keeping
Your
the house
standards.
maintained.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a three-way contract.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once you get an approved dwelling, whether it's in the public housing areas that are established or you rent out of there are utility allowances in some instances. How does that work?
Okay. We put a utility allowances on all of our apartments. If you are if you're paying the minimum rent, or if you're paying anything besides the market rate rent, we provide you with a utility allowance. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think right now we have 17 families that's on a negative rent. And what that means, or we have what we call a minimum rent is $50.
Right.
But they're living in, say, a two-bedroom apartment that has a $75 utility allowance. So they're a negative. They pay us $50, but we pay them $75 back. And I think we have like 17 or 18 people like that right now. Our utility allowance ranges anywhere from $30 to maybe $110 per month per apartment, depends on what the apartment size is and where it's located at. And that is also good for the Section 8 program too. If you're in a Section 8 program, we provide a utility allowance for that also.
Okay.
You know, I wonder where they came up with that term Section 8. When I was in the military, if a guy had Section 8, that meant he was mentally
Gone around the
deranged.
bend.
He's off the deep end. They hauled him away. So I often wonder where the origin of Section 8 came from. Some are.
You know, Bill, it is awful interesting how they did come up with that. You know, why didn't they call it Section 9 or how about 10-4? Or wonder why they come up with Section 8. I need to research that and find out.
That's what Bill keeps telling me. I'm Section 8.
Well,
now
he's told me something
it's not
different.
flattering, is it?
I had built up to think that was one part of the top 10. So that took care of that.
Oh, another myth blown. I was interested in your saying that 70% of senior Illinois women who live alone live in poverty.
Live near poverty.
That's astonishing to me.
Yep, it's mind-boggling.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
You know, go
sobering
back to that
fact.
example where I've told you about that lady that raised her family, married for 50
Lost the
years,
farm. Right.
lost the farm.
Yeah.
Husband died, didn't plan properly. She's never worked because she's raised a family. So
And if she was on a farm, chances are she worked pretty hard.
Yep, and
But not much
and
pay.
his income is not going to go a lot towards the Social Security payment that he's going to get later in life.
Yeah.
So her Social Security is very low, but they had a heck of a life. And now this lady, she's no longer with us. This has been something that happened 15 years ago. But we have a lot of situations like that. A lot.
Sure.
They're in poverty.
Now, when you assess their income, Social Security would be one of the things that you'd take into consideration, surely.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. All their income.
And in many cases, if not, well, certainly not all, but many cases, that Social Security stipend is the only source of income for some folks out there.
Yeah.
Which is a sad thing.
I bet.
Yes.
Getting back to proper planning, or maybe the inability to have anything that you can plan around even. You know, maybe it goes back generations sometimes, I'm sure.
You know,
we want to make sure Mr. Allen gets to cover the things that he wants to be sure and cover, and we're just about out of time. Steve, I'm going to just pass the baton to you so you can sum up in any way that you see fit, because there are the things that you want to cover.
Well, I think you guys did a very good job of covering the stuff I want to talk about. I've got one thing I want to mention,
Yes.
and I'll be done. Habitat for Humanity. I am on their board. It's a great organization. They bring people that cannot afford traditional housing, a lot of times from my housing projects, that would never have a chance of getting out of that project for nothing ever, and provide them with housing. It's a huge program. If you could support them, support them. They do nothing but good for the community.
Amen.
Glad you mentioned that. By the way, they just mentioned our friend Leonard Kruismark the other day. I thought that was appropriate. So hats off to you folks in Habitat who saw fit to honor Brother Kruismark. That was very nice. Go right ahead, Steve.
I'm through. I've finished up, unless you have any other questions.
No, but we do thank you for coming. This has been helpful. We got to know some things that we've been mistaken about forever. Thank you.
You know, your State Street housing, your four floors there, 5 floors. I keep forgetting. Tell me. In any event, 5. Those folks who live there are uniquely lucky in their proximity to services which are needed. Ergo, grocery, drugstores, within walking distance. So that's a great thing for those folks who live there. And the place is kept up nicely. The grounds are always clean. And I know the rooms I know each individual renter is responsible for making sure that they're of their own cleanliness, but you've got a staff that takes care of that place, and so hats off to those folks, because that's a big job.
Absolutely, Bill. It's a wonderful building. It's a great little community. There's a lot of activities going on, and the good thing about it now, for people that's looking for housing, we have a very small waiting list. Somebody can come in and get qualified and get housing right away. In that, we have a couple vacancies as we talk right now that I know that there will be people out in this community would love to live there.
Very good.
Well, Logan County is lucky to have this units here. As I say, it's not just a high-rise there on State Street. It's the Section 8 housing that's available for them. The Centennial Courts, which was a pre-runner of all of them when it started. That was right after the Second War in the early 50s. So, and that provides, and has provided down through the years, good housing, substantial housing for folks who are in need. And there's nothing wrong for helping your fellow man out. That's what charity means. These folks are not to be considered charity cases by any stretch of the imagination. They would resent being put in that category, and rightfully so. But the Logan County Housing Authority is doing a whale of a job. So we appreciate Steve Allen being with us today. You have anything you'd like to close with, Mr. Allen?
That 10-story or 5-story high-rise that Bill is referencing is at 1028 North College Street. My offices are behind it. Come out and take a look at them. You'll love it.
Thank you very much, Steve Allen. And we always like to close Viewpoint with, I've decided to make this our permanent closure. Be the reason somebody smiled today. Thank you for Viewpoint.